notamment les médecins,
sorry,
infirmières,
Ottawa.
infirmiers
Let's listen
et
in.
préposés. Pendant la pandémie de la
During the
COVID-19,
pandemic of COVID-19, particularly with the older people, but also with all populations, they need to acknowledge the courage and the required sacrifices for themselves and for their families in order to be in the front lines. That they underlined the job of Quebec and different provinces to respond to the health crisis and find the direct effects on their respective budgets, which demands to increase in a durable fashion and in an important fashion the health transfer until the end of 2022 to support the efforts of the government of Quebec and different provinces and the health workers and the population. It was almost a premonition in this motion when we see that the issues that they're raising are those that the government has been not hearing. And in yesterday's statement, it shows that the Canadian deficit is leading to $380 million. And there's some positive measures, but looking at the $380 billion and the $25 billion of positive measures, it looks like sugarcoating when a lot of it is an increase of the salary subsidy. And let's not forget the Liberals did touch the salary subsidy, and the same applies with the Conservatives, who are open to give it back, and the NDP and the Green Party have used it. They will use it, and they want to still use it, and puts them even more in the back pocket of the Liberals. I want to remind you that there was nothing to help for the older people, and I don't know what's the political analysis that can lead someone to stay so indifferent. In terms of health, there is a big provocation here to what was 5 days that became 10 days before a meeting between the premiers and the Prime Minister. The Government of Canada is throwing the glove in their face, saying not only I'm not planning for any extra transfer in health, but I'm ready to put in the money in the long-term care center if I can decide what will happen, and you lose that authority as a provincial government to the benefit of the federal. And there's a pretty severe issue, and I believe that the Finance Minister of Quebec in the next minutes will react to this. The activities and the measures, the will regarding the relaunch is pushed to later. And there's something that is really important in time, at a time where even weeks or later after the Americans, when the time where Quebecers and Canadians we will need to strike hard on the relaunch. And we need to plan this. We need to plan this when we are a government. And it is planned when there's an organization and there's so little credibility. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where our resources will be. If we are in the hotel sector and the arts sector, we don't know where we're going. And when we are in an industry that is severely touched, like the aerospace, where the word was written once for the principle of it in the economic statement, the government is going with the large stores that have to have an electoral platform out of this. The government is saying that there's a very bad deficit, and we're showing it right now. In 3-4 months, you will forget about it, and we will get, after we start to administrate the vaccines, with a budget that, in an admitted fashion, will not counter those spendings, because we're saying that the interest rates are low, the spending will be so small. And come with us, we'll go shopping together, and we'll pay one day. The interest rates are low, and we're purchasing ourselves an electoral program. And it's so cynical. And when we leave those who are ill, the older people, the provinces like Quebec and others who are responsible for them without any necessary resources. The Bloc Québécois is worried about our older population, for the health, and for the relaunch of our economy. I have the impression that the government is, by stepping on the toes of the province of Quebec, by showing contempt for the language of Quebec and It looks like the government is building an electoral program for the springtime. But by stepping on the values and on the interests and on the authority of Quebec, that's not the Liberal program that Mr. Trudeau is building. It's our program. Thank you.
Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions, commençons par les questions au téléphone. Comme toujours, une question suivie par journaliste. Opératrice, avons-nous une première question?
Merci. La première question de Raymond Filion, TVA. La parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, M. Blanchet. Le fait que la mise à jour
The fact that the economic update had no money to the health, where the provinces are asking for $20 billion extra, what is it announcing in terms of that summit between Trudeau and the premiers in 10 days? Well, we're saying right away that this summit won't be a success. Mr. Trudeau will show up saying, if you want additional money, I consider that it's my money, personally, even if it's you who paid ultimately. And I will impose requirements or conditions. Everybody is against this. Then he says, you want more health care? Then you must turn to the federal government, even if they're not the authority, because we're richer. And that's his reasoning. And that's why it's December 10th. Why? Because the parliament is no longer seating at that day, because the next day he won't be in the Commons having to answer questions by 2 of the 3 opposition parties on this and being told, well, what are you doing for the provinces? What are you doing for the funding of the health care system? What are you doing in terms of the requests? And you're getting there not only with the empty hands, but with the injury of imposing your conditions and an emergency. It's like an ambulance worker gets to the accident site and imposes conditions to the person injured before helping him or her. That's the practice of the Freeland Trudeau government today. And I'm worried in terms of the health and the minimum life quality of hundreds of thousands of Quebecers who are either sick, they're worried of being sick, or they're older and they're vulnerable. And how many emails I'm getting from people saying, well, my increase of my pension is so small. And that's the improved treatment that Justin Trudeau is offering to the older people? Well, let's take this down. In terms of vaccination, are you reassured? Because Mr. Trudeau said on Friday that the majority of the people in Canada will be vaccinated by September. I've lost any possibility of being reassured by Mr. Trudeau's words, but the most important thing is the deadline or the delay it takes. And there could be some by pure compassion for many weeks, starting with the beginning of vaccination in the United States until the beginning of vaccination in Canada. There will be a lot of days to the benefit of Justin Trudeau will fall right in the holiday period when we're looking elsewhere. And during all those days when Quebec will be counting its people who are sick and its victims, the Americans will get vaccinated. Now, that everybody is laid by 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 3 months, or tomorrow, it's too late. And because the Prime Minister should have used a negotiation lever to have the vaccine at the same time, and he hasn't done it. He did not do it when he had time to do it. And it's unacceptable. And those 6, 8, 12 weeks are so heavy for the economy as well. Those 12 extra weeks before opening hotels, restaurants, before relaunching our cultural activities and getting people back in businesses with the minimum of constraint to just in our industrial manufacturing sector. 6 to 12 extra weeks, if not more, before we can reanimate the downtown of Montreal, to reanimate old town of Quebec City, and extremely severe. It's the quarter of a financial year sacrificed by a nonchalant of a bad negotiator.
Merci. La prochaine question est de Émilie Bergeron, agence QMI. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour. Aussi sur,
also on this meeting with the premiers on the transfer. Minister Leblanc, by announcing on Twitter, includes many topics. He says that there will be a meeting to discuss on the strengthening of the healthcare system, the distribution of vaccines, the common front against COVID-19. Do you think that the federal is diluting many topics that are planned for this summit instead of speaking only about the transfer? Well, there's somebody at the federal government that's so strategic. I don't know the details. They don't talk to me about this, but there's clearly a will to reduce the importance and the media impact and the public impact of that meeting. It should have happened a long time ago. There was a lot of meetings between the Prime Minister and the premiers of the different provinces, and we understand between the lines that it was hardly any. There was hardly any cordiality. And now everybody is saying, well, okay, let's turn to weird Christmas vacation mode at this time of the year, adding topics to that summit will make it so that we're diluting. Yes, and we won't talk about the health transfer as much. It's like we go meet with a banker and we change topic. The government, the federal government, owes a lot of money to the provinces. It's not money that he has. He should pay those monies due to the deals in place, and he holds those meetings to do partisanship and do partisan dealings. Madame Freeland has put a notice late last night where a bill will be tabled for many of the measures in the economic statement. At this point, has the Bloc decided how it will vote? Well, of course, we will analyze and look at the project and the bill. We understand that there's a lot of centralizing measures in there, but in fact, the government, by putting the salary subsidy to the NDP, is making sure that the NDP will continue voting for them.
Merci. La prochaine question est de Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Blanchet. Vous allez peut-être écouter.
You probably have heard the interview that Mr. Trudeau did with Paul Arcand this morning. He said that he has already transferred billions of dollars to the provinces in health care system, and in his view, the health transfers have increased. Is he making openness for the negotiation coming? Mr. Trudeau said that there will be no negotiations. He clearly said, here's what we will do, not what we will do. And he said, well, yeah, we will put money in the healthcare system, in the long-term care center, if we have the authority, even if it's currently under provincial authority. And it won't be negotiating a health transfer in this. He hasn't put any money or increased the portion of the federal government to 35%, which would be the legitimate minimum. It's not the federal government that administrates the health sector. It's Quebec and the provinces. So it's up to Quebec and the provinces to have the necessary monies for the system and the healthcare services for the elders. And the government is not doing these transfers because they want the provinces to let go of the authority on health so that they can be even a bigger central government.
Monsieur Blanchet, Chris Reynolds, Canadian Press. The Chief Medical Officer and the Deputy Public Health Officer have both said last week that we don't need to wait for approval of a vaccine to necessarily start shipping. That this could happen ahead of that process. But the Prime Minister has cited approval as one hurdle on the shipping chain. So to what extent is there merit in the Prime Minister's justifying a delay in shipping plans by citing a lack of approval so far by Health Canada?
There are many things that the Prime Minister might have done or attempted in order to reduce the delay between the moment at which the Americans will get the vaccine and the Canadians will get the vaccine, including the fact that from the very beginning, he could have used this disposition in the emergency law of March, authorizing the government, entitling the government to take any existing technology and reproduce it, making things right with the owner of the intellectual property later on. He could have done that. He could have negotiated that. He would have done that if he was not provided with the vaccine at the same moment as anybody else. He could have done that also. But now he's trying to justify, as you said, a delay, which is not acceptable. And I am surprised, I must say, that people are not reacting more strongly to that. When people will start seeing pictures of American people getting the vaccine, while we will be watching the press conference of the government of Quebec, telling the people how many of us got sick in the last 24 hours and how many of us died in the last 24 hours, people might see things differently and might understand how bad was the negotiation piloted by this Prime Minister.
Yesterday, Finance Minister Freeland unveiled some of the first steps toward a multi-year national childcare plan. And she cited Quebec as the example to follow in this nationwide plan. I'm wondering, maybe it's too early to say, but have you thought about whether the province, whether it might be in the province's interest to buy into or participate in such a plan, or are things good as they are in Quebec?
If the minister wanted things to be very clear, she should say, here is the plan for a program for every provinces but Quebec, because Quebec does not want it. Then that would be clear. And every dollar which would be invested in that plan, which would normally have been invested in Quebec, should be without any condition. They don't understand the words without any condition. But without any condition, it should be given to the government of Quebec.
Thomas?
If
the minister wants to, that there's no ambiguity in the intent of the liberal NDP government for a pan-Canadian daycare center, they need to announce a program that applies to every province but for Quebec, because Quebec doesn't want it and have the best practice model. So every dollar invested in this program that should have been invested in Quebec would be without any condition, and we will. They don't understand that definition. With no condition, this money should be given to the Quebec government. There should be no debate. Now we know that the centralizing temptation of this government in all of this.
Bonjour, Monsieur Blanchet, Thomas Laberge de Radio-Canada. Vous avez peu d'espoir.
You have a little hope regarding the meeting with the premiers and Prime Minister Trudeau. If you're sure that the conclusions are already written, what do you think will come out of that meeting? A series of premiers who will come to the mic, each in their province and in Quebec, to say that the exercise didn't deliver what it should have delivered, and they were brought in to accept delays and pretty empty shells in terms of negotiation. Now, it's possible between now and then that the Trudeau government takes the old trick of the centralizing government trick to negotiate with the provinces specifically in order to break the common front of the provinces and get to that meeting, a virtual meeting, and say, well, here you go, you don't even agree with each other because, I don't know, maybe it costs a bit less to purchase the support of PEI, or maybe it's less expensive to of course, it is less expensive than PEI in Quebec, but you see, you break this kind of common front because they are reasonable and they agree with the federal government on certain things. And we've seen it so many times. So that's one scenario that could happen. But I presume that the provinces in Quebec are talking and they will stick together. And then the health of our citizens is primordial. Well, you seem to be worried about the statement yesterday. And Mr. Trudeau said that he doesn't want to increase the income taxes to pay for this debt. What do you think that the government should do to eventually get back in control of the public finances? There's a way to spend monies in an urgent fashion and an important fashion before, and not saying that, oh, that is not, that big of a deal. When you spend without counting, sometimes it's because you know that you will never reimburse those monies. And of course, the children of Canadians and Quebecers will refund or will reimburse. And when we will reimburse for decades, this government, this Prime Minister, will be rocking themselves on a rocking chair on their balcony. And it's a lack of prudence that is severe. I'm not saying that spending shouldn't happen. I'm saying that those spendings should be done prudently, with carefulness, and not in an eccentric fashion, and not by building yourself an electoral program for a window that will happen after the start of vaccination, and probably on the day after a budget that will be an odious distribution of gifts, because the bad news of this deficit will already be sent through the throat of people in November, when they were still worried about COVID. Here's my question again. Would you agree that with what the NDP is proposing to increase income taxes to the rich so that we can finance the deficit? I agree that with the principle that those who are richer pay more income tax, and maybe even more than today. I underline the fact that there's some businesses and people who have put a lot of money in their pockets with COVID, and they should be called to contribute even more. Now, if this comes with the authorization to the federal government to come step into the authority of Quebec and provinces, I will say cut the Pier 2, increase the contribution of those who have enriched themselves, and we will leave Quebec with its exclusive authority. And this parliamentary trap exists for decades, but the thing is that the Bloc Québécois will not caution any stepping into Quebec authorities.
This morning on the radio, the Prime Minister said he did not want to criticize provinces. That's not his role, but he did say that there was a lot of complaints about rapid tests, that there weren't enough rapid tests, that the government wasn't doing enough. And when they finally got the rapid tests to the provinces, some aren't using them. Do you see this as a critique of the provinces and the work that they're doing?
That is quite an interesting way to present the question. I believe that the Prime Minister, with a very suave voice and an air of vulnerability, is presenting critics against the provinces quite often, because he strongly believes that by the right given through his father or God, he is basically superior to any Prime Minister of any province. The provinces might be a little less polite and suave when they will answer him. And if there are issues with the tests, it is entirely the jurisdiction of the provinces to be careful with those tests.
I guess my follow-up is, do the provinces have to bear any blame in our COVID response? They don't seem to be spending, we're presenting these numbers from the government. The government is presenting these numbers that 80% of all COVID spending has been from the federal government, and only 20% or 19% is coming from the provinces and territories. So do they need to put up more money? Do they need to be quicker to approve these rapid tests, especially when they're complaining about it all the time?
If somebody is entitled to criticize the work of Quebec or provinces, it's the people of Quebec or provinces, not the Prime Minister of Canada. And if you have $5 and I have $5, and in order to survive, we need $10, if you are the expert, I will give you my $5, and you will save us. In present situation, the jurisdiction in healthcare is the jurisdiction of Quebec and provinces. If the federal government has money, which basically belongs to the provinces and Quebec, you should give it to them.
On indique que c'est tout le temps que nous avons. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse.
Merci beaucoup.